In just over a week, the season of Lent will draw to a close, and we will enter into the Holy 3 days, the first of which we call Maundy Thursday. It is my tradition that on Maundy Thursday, as we celebrate our Lord's Supper, that for the proper preface, which is the part of the liturgy of the Great Thanksgiving that begins, "It is indeed right, our duty and our joy," and then concludes with, "We praise your name," and join their unending hymn. On Maundy Thursday, I read a proper preface that was taken from the words of Hippolytus of Rome, who, in describing the actions of Jesus on Easter morning, wrote, and I quote, "He is the one who, handed over to a death he freely accepted, in order to destroy death, to break the bonds of the evil one, to crush hell underfoot." To crush hell underfoot, that is quite the image. Powerful words written to help us get through the darkness that lies ahead through Thursday and into Good Friday, so that we can rejoice in the bright morning beyond those 2 days and on the other side of Holy Saturday. Today's gospel reading tells of the death of Lazarus. Lazarus and his sisters, Mary and Martha, were all followers of Jesus, and they were also Jewish. They were Jews who believed that the Old Testament covenant was being fulfilled and that the Messiah had come in Jesus, who we call Christ. Jewish tradition of the time did not believe in hell. The more held understanding or belief was in Sheol. The thought was, when someone died, their body was interred, and their spirit waited in Sheol. Now, there is not a good section and a bad section. There is just Sheol, kind of like an airport, kind of like sitting at John Glenn. Neither bad nor great, just kind of there, where everyone waits. In this case, waiting for the Messiah. The Messiah upon whose coming bodies will be resurrected, and spirits will re-enter them. An image that is often heard in the Old Testament reading from Ezekiel that is prescribed for this Sunday morning. I'll put a link to the Ezekiel text in the description below. Anyway, at that time, when the Messiah comes and the resurrection happens and the spirits re-enter the bodies, at that time, God's chosen will be called back home. This is one of the reasons that rabbinic Jews to this day are against cremation. Because, it's thought, if your body is burned, then where will your spirit enter when the Messiah returns? The other school of thought, in the pre-Christian first century, where John wrote his gospel, was the Greek approach, that of an afterlife, which was simply the life, just like your current one, that you lived after the current one, hence after life. The Greek system laid the foundation for this idea that if you led a good life, then in your next one, you got to either travel up Mount Olympus, or if you led a bad life, you descended down into the underworld, a place that took its name from the Greek god who had dominion over that realm, His name was Hades. These were the two major thoughts around death in the first century when Lazarus lived. And they were two major thoughts about death when he died as well. Some things have always been and will always be the same. Lazarus died. Lazarus' sisters were sad. His friends missed him. And as we often do, they thought, what could have happened differently to prevent this sad and dark day from arriving? There's been a question asked by many people of Christians since the very beginning. That question is, if Christ's resurrection defeated death, if our baptism represents our death to this world, so that as we share in a death like his, we too can share in a resurrection like Christ's, then what happens to all of those people who died before the resurrection of Jesus? All of those people who, well, are much like Lazarus in this story. What about Moses and Abraham and all of those who just happened to be born in the wrong century? Are they left out in the cold? Well, dating back to the first century, there has been a common belief that I personally think is true. And what it is that from Good Friday to Easter morning, those 3 days after the death of Jesus, Jesus descended into hell. He descends into hell so he can lead out all of those who will follow him. This is commonly referred to as the harrowing of hell. This is the journey by which Jesus crushes hell underfoot and brings past faithful generations into God's glorious and radiant future. Ancient images of the harrowing of hell depict hell as a dragon or a monster with its mouth wide open, and Jesus leading a long procession out. One of these images is used as the photo on the front of this YouTube video. You may be looking at it right now. Jesus is typically followed first by two people, a man and a woman, typically naked except for a fig leaf. The fig leaf lets us know that this is Adam and Eve, so that we can see the truth that no one is forgotten, ever. Adam and Eve, the first two, were not forgotten, but Jesus descended into hell to crush it overfoot and to bring them out. Today, we've heard a mini version of this same idea. Lazarus is dead. There are no two ways about it. He is not sleeping to us. He is most certainly and without a doubt dead. He is sleeping to Jesus. Jesus, who can call through the darkness, through that eternal slumber, awakening both Lazarus' soul and body and welcoming them back to a new life. I find myself, when talking about what happens after we die, the short answer is I really don't know. Is it like the Sheol tradition of Judaism? Or is it an afterlife traveling either down into the underworld or up into Mount Olympus? Could it be like traversing multiple rings through either the inferno, purgatory, or paradise, like Dante wrote about in the 14th century? I don't know. I haven't done that yet. However, I do know that Martin Luther once wrote that heaven is being in the presence of God, both on earth and in the great beyond. Conversely, Luther wrote, hell is being away from the presence of God, or being ignorant and unaware of the positive and life-changing power and presence of God in this world and on each and every one of us. I like how Luther thinks. I believe in the simple truth that heaven is being in the presence of God, whatever that may look like, both there and here. I feel this in the moments that are most blissful, when I am aware of God and thankful for the creation that God has made, thankful for God's support and love and care for me on blissful days and when the world outside seems scary and harsh. And in the moments when I feel most lost, in the moments when I feel most dead on the inside, those are the times when God calls to me through the darkness, reminding me that God has not forgotten me, but just the opposite, that Christ has come for me, for you, and for each and every one of us. You, me, and Lazarus, no matter where we might be. God bless. Amen.